The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The judge now taking the bench, as we said moments ago, and she is speaking. Just going to go ahead and read to you what's going on and what she is saying. She's saying that Manafort is not victim number one. She's saying that these proceedings will not incriminate anyone in the ongoing investigation. Obviously, a lot having to do with Russia collusion, interference. She then says, and she goes right to it here, she says, any conspiracy, collusion was not presented in this case. Therefore, it was not resolved by this case. And I think that is an important point. We're all looking to see when is this collusion question going to be resolved. And the judge going right there saying it's not resolved and it's not going to be resolved by what takes place here today. Obviously, we're all waiting for the Mueller report and what happens there. But then again here, we have the issue of collusion and what this investigation has been centered about. And they're saying, as the judge did last week, that's not what today is about. Last week's sentencing was not about collusion.
Neither is today.
And neither is today.
Believe me, the case of conspiracy between a foreign adversary known as Russia and the United States has not been adjudicated because it's not been charged in either of these courts. Now, Paul Manafort just got 43 more months. 43. It is possible that he will not spend the rest of his life in prison, and I know it's wrong, but somehow that puts a crimp in my day. 13 months he got for witness tampering. Now, if I knew that I was going to be charged with a felony, like something that carried a life sentence or something that carried 25 or 30 years, something like, and I thought, well, if I tamper with the witness and I get the witness to lie for me, and I tell the witness that I'll pay them or there's something at the end of the rainbow for them, and the only thing I was risking was another 13 months, wouldn't you do it? I would do it. This is like white privilege gone amok. This is another rich white guy. And, the whole entire homework today, I was putting all the stories in from last night to this morning. And, they all had this, I always say, look for the connective tissue. Look for the thread that you could, sew all the stories together with. And this one is so easy because it's all about white, rich people. Everything. White, rich people have every advantage you could possibly imagine from the judicial system. The justice system is totally rigged, as we now know, okay? Now, we always thought, we used to have these conversations whenever we would talk about affirmative action and how ridiculous people are when they talk about it because they don't understand it. They think it means, oh, you're black, you get in. No, it just adds a few extra points to the total score that you receive from an admissions officer with regard to how well did you do on your SATs, how well in law school, LSATs, right? How well did you do? Were you involved in community service? Were you an athlete? Were you, in a club? Were you, a part of the AV squad? Did you write for the school newspaper? Normal day. And then if, in fact, in addition to being active in all those things and having wonderful grades, having perfect report cards, having a 1400 on the SATs, scoring in the top 0.1% on the LSATs. In addition to that, if you came from a zip code that is notoriously known for being totally underfunded, and you went to a public school there and overcame that institutionalized form of racism, you got a few extra points as a attaboy. And that's what affirmative action is. Now people have no room to talk to me about affirmative action and how bad it all is. And there's no such thing as white privilege. And there's no such thing as, a legacy. See, I used to always tell people whenever we would talk about affirmative action, there's this thing called legacies, right? Meaning if your daddy went to Stanford, you get some extra points for that. If your daddy went to Yale, you get some extra points for that. You get preferential treatment. It was affirmative action for rich white kids, is what it is. So like W, this brilliant genius of a guy, right? Yeah, he gets into Yale. So what we're watching here is some natural, unnatural rich people. Do you know what I'm saying? Their unnatural behavior once they become rich. Where they say, I want this, and I want this, and you can't have it, so I'm just going to make sure I get it. And admissions to a school is a zero-sum game. Meaning, if I get in, you don't. There's only a certain number of seats. And if I get preferential treatment because of money or because of my legacy then you don't get that seat. I get it. There's only a certain, and this Paul Manafort ought to be chained to a rock while birds of prey eat his liver. In a perfect world, that's what would happen. But the world is not a fair place. Just ask any poor family who tried to get into USC by spending the entire high school career on a freaking rowing team, for real. A rowing team. Why do we even have that? Look, I'm looking at this Varsity Blues scandal. I'm looking at Paul Manafort. I'm looking at, money talks, and you could say anything you want, and you could be as racist as you want to be. You could be as ugly as you want to be, as misogynist as long as you're bringing in the dough, as long as you're bringing in the Benjamins, to quote Ilhan Omar, then everything is excusable. Your behavior is excusable. The crap you say on the TV, the crap you say on the radio, the crap you say about Muslims, the crap you say about, black people, that blue lives matter, black lives don't. Jews will not replace us. There's some very fine people. It doesn't matter as long as you're bringing in the cash. It's just such a twisted oligarchy. It's an autocratic society we live in now. It's full throttle. It's full bore. It's money. That's all that matters. And if you have it, you can do whatever you want. Just like he said, you could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, and there's not a court. Now Manafort, God, this is just so disgusting. I will say he did get a total now. He will be in jail for 7.5 years, which is something. It's something. This globe-trotting lobbyist, a guy who made a choice, and the choice was not to protect and defend the interests of the United States. Oh, hell no. The choice was to choose a foreign adversary and advocate for their autocrat in Ukraine. Now, what kills me about Manafort is this. People died because of Paul Manafort's lobbying. People died because of Viktor Yanukovych. People literally, there were snipers on a roof, and they were literally killed dead at the Maidan when they were protesting. Innocent, peaceful protesters who were just outraged when they found out that Yanukovych was stealing, when they found out that he was, living the way he was, and that they were, making $450 a month. I mean, they were protesting this oligarchy. They were protesting this Russian-backed autocrat. They were protesting the fact that their elections were a fraud, okay? And they were shot and killed, and Paul Manafort was lobbying for a side that not only, encouraged this, and covered for it, but also, used the same media plan against Yulia Tymoshenko, who, lock her up. She was locked up. Do you remember her? She was really pretty. She had braids on her head. She did the Dutch girl thing, with the hair doozy. A Ukrainian girl. Anyway, So here you have Manafort, who was living this globe-trotting, larger-than-lavish lifestyle with many, many apartments and houses in the Hamptons and throwing money away on Uber, landscaping, architects, and just crazy. And then he thinks he's broke or whatever, so he tries to defraud the banks into making him loans against these apartments he owns, against the properties he has. He lies and blah, blah. And he tampers with a witness after the fact to get a witness who he gave polling data to, American polling data to, who has connections to Russian intelligence, in order to make himself whole with a Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska, right? And then lied about it during a plea agreement. I mean, this is just so, it's so mafia, it's so bizarre, it's so above the law, it's so entitled, it's so crazy. And Paul Manafort's attorney literally argued in court today that none of this would have happened to poor Paul Manafort had he not worked for the Trump campaign. So what were you saying to the court? That he would have gotten away with all this? He would have been a traitor to the nation and gotten away with it had he not been, eager to make himself whole with a Russian oligarch, and the way he thought to do it was to join the Trump campaign and rig the election for Donald Trump? I mean, it was practically an admission of collusion that he made when he was speaking to the court today, this brilliant lawyer of his. But honest to God, this was so incredible that as Paul Manafort was being sentenced to a total of 7.5 years, part of it would run, concurrent to what the Virginia court gave him. This T.S. Ellis guy said, oh, he had an otherwise blameless life. I mean, if you think being the torturer's bagman, if you think being the head of the torturer's lobby is a blameless life, if you think that guys who use child soldiers and rape as a weapon and tortured people and caused the largest epidemic of amputees because of landmines, and that you are advocating to turn this monster into a decent, respectable leader in Somalia, in Congo, and Angola. If you think that's a blameless life, you better check yourself, because you got some entitlement issues too. You also think white people can do just about anything they want. Now, while Paul Manafort was being meted out this additional 43 more months for a total of 7.5 years in a federal prison in Club Fed, New York was filing another indictment of him. New York State just filed another 16-count indictment for fraud against him, for mortgage fraud, for lying to banks, for lying to appraisers, for getting people to. I mean, it's just so unbelievable, and that comes with a sentence of possibly 25 years. You think he'll get it? You think he'll get... Oh, my God.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, I want you to listen to the reporting here, all right?
Any conspiracy, collusion was not presented in this case. Therefore, it was not resolved by this case. And I think that is an important point. We're all looking to see, when is this collusion question going to be resolved? And the judge going right there saying it's not resolved, and it's not going to be resolved by what takes place here today. Obviously, we're all waiting for the Mueller report and what happens there. But then again here, we have the issue of collusion and what this investigation has been centered about. And they're saying, as the judge did last week, that's not what today is about. Last week's sentencing was not about collusion.
Neither is today.
And neither is today.
Okay, and neither is today. All right. And then Paul Manafort's attorney, Kevin Dowling, goes outside. I swear to God, he goes right outside the courtroom. Now, remember, for those of you who are lawyers, he's an officer of the court. How in the world does he get away with doing what he just did here? The judge just said collusion, this Russia conspiracy was not part of the charges here. Robert Mueller had an agreement with Paul Manafort, and Paul Manafort was cooperating with Mueller, or so Mueller thought. And he started to tamper with witnesses while he was under a plea agreement. Mueller sent that complaint to this judge, Amy Berman Jackson. She ruled on witness tampering and gave him 13 months for doing exactly what Mueller said he did. But the issue, the underlying issue that Mueller is investigating, was never given to Judge Amy Berman Jackson to adjudicate. Mueller has kept that issue for himself. And just so you can see, the world is not done having its justice with regard to Paul Manafort. New York charged him on 16 more counts of mortgage fraud and some ancillary, mortgage fraud, like lying to a bank fraud, things like that. 16 count indictment after he was adjudicated and sentenced today. So just know this, the Mueller issue is the Mueller issue. It's not the Judge Jackson issue. It's not the Judge Ellis in Virginia issue. Those were financial crimes that Mueller found early, and just said, these financial crimes, they belong, in a federal court in Virginia. Oh, these federal crimes, they belong in a federal court in New York. These financial crimes has nothing to do with the question that Mueller is grappling with. Was there interference in our elections by the Russians? And did anybody on the Trump campaign or Trump himself know about it? That's the scope of the Mueller investigation. And any crimes that he finds during that investigation, obviously he offloads to other federal courts so he can focus like a laser on the scope of his investigation. And that is what has happened here. Now, clearly the judge said this has nothing to do with collusion. This has absolutely everything to do with his greed, that he knew better. He knew exactly what he was doing, that he's callous, she said there was no evidence presented with regard to a conspiracy with Russia, that this case was not about a Russian conspiracy. She actually said that the issue of collusion is a non sequitur. Here's what she said. The question of whether anyone in Trump's campaign conspired or colluded with the Russian government was not presented to this court in this case. She added that the assertion may not even be accurate because special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation is not over. And she found that Manafort had lied to Mueller about the issues at the heart of his investigation. She said it's not appropriate to say investigators haven't found anything because you lied to the investigators, and the issue of lying was before this court, but the underlying crime of conspiracy was not. Here's what his lawyer said.
I'm about to say will not be a surprise. Judge Jackson conceded that there was absolutely no evidence of any Russian collusion in this case. So that makes two courts have ruled no evidence of any collusion with any Russian.
That's not what she said.
Two.
Not what she said.
Very sad.
That's not what she said.
Very sad.
That's not what she said.
For such a callous, harsh sentence that is totally unnecessary. Much like this.
You guys are liars now. You're not lawyers. You're liars.
You're not lawyers, you're liars. I always told you that, didn't I? Yeah. No, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, how, as an officer of the court, does he get to stand out in front of the court right after the judge says that it isn't appropriate to say that investigators haven't found any evidence of collusion when Paul Manafort lied to the investigators, and the substance of Mueller's investigation is not the substance of this case. What the substance of this case was whether or not he witness tampered and whether or not he committed a fraud, banking fraud. That's what she was there to hear. That's what the evidence was produced to show. And they found, the Virginia court brought him in guilty of 8 counts. And then in this court, Paul Manafort pled guilty to 10 other counts. There wasn't even a trial. There wasn't a trial because he pled guilty. He pled guilty. He wanted 2 trials. You remember this at the very beginning? He wanted 2 trials. And he got 2 trials. And at the first trial, they charged him with 18 counts. And the jury found him guilty on 8. That left 10 remaining counts. He entered into a plea deal with Mueller. He said he would plead guilty to the 10 that the jury, one person in the jury, hung that jury. One person. And he said he would plead guilty to the 10 remaining counts. His guilty plea is what she was sentencing him on, in addition to witness tampering with Konstantin Kilimnik. And she found that he had committed witness tampering. She gave him 13 months for tampering with a witness, for trying to get a witness to lie for him while he was engaged in a plea deal with Bob Mueller. That's all that was in front of her. This is a very narrow thing. The 10 guilty, he pled. So sick. And then his Kevin goes out in front of the court and says the judge found no evidence of collusion. That's because it wasn't a question in front of her. That was not anything that she had to adjudicate. She had a man pleading guilty to 10 financial crimes and a charge of witness tampering that was presented to her by Bob Mueller, which she agreed with previously. And today was the sentencing for those 10 that he pled guilty to, 10 financial crimes that he pled guilty to, and witness tampering. She said his crimes were not just a failure to comply with some pesky regulations, but lying to the American people and the American Congress. It's hard to overstate the number of lies and the amount of money involved. Manafort's motivation was not to support a family, but to sustain a lifestyle that was ostentatiously opulent and extravagantly lavish. More houses than a family can enjoy, more suits than one man can wear. It's not appropriate to say investigators haven't found anything when you lied to the investigators. And the mitigating factors, meaning the things that played to his benefit, were his age, the millions of dollars he forfeited, which, by the way, for everybody who complains on Fox News about, it's cost $9 million, $9 million from, he forfeited $25 million. So we're actually making money. But she said the millions he forfeited and the fact that his finances and career are in tatters, and I disagree with this, minimize the chance that he will offend again. Not only will he offend again, he's probably doing it right now. This guy is incorrigible. He will never change. Now, he was looking at 10 more years in prison. In addition to the force, that would have been 14. Instead, they split the baby. This is what judges do. They're like Solomon, right? So he got 7.5 years, and this was on a guilty plea, which is why he didn't get the full 10. He pled guilty to conspiracy to defraud the United States by illegally lobbying Ukraine and hiding the proceeds overseas, and then the witness tampering, encouraging witnesses to lie on his behalf. He never wrote a letter to the judge to say he was sorry, and she said that she was very shocked about that, he did say, I'm really sorry to all those negatively affected by my actions. And she said, no, you're sorry you got caught. He is not capable of change. He is a mastermind of conspiracies, not theories, but actual conspiracies. He was paid more than $50 million by Russian-backed politicians and the Russian-backed Party of Regions, Oleg Deripaska, a Russian oligarch, completely tied to Vladimir Putin. But that was not what was in front of her. What was in front of her was the FARA violation, which I called early on. I said he's going to get, indicted for being a foreign agent. And that's what he was indicted. He pled guilty to that. And also, holding all his proceeds in 30 different accounts. 30 different accounts and tax fraud and tax evasion. And then, she said, "Oh, I don't think he'll, do another crime." Meanwhile, New York just, indicts him as he's being. I mean, it's just moments after New York says, "Okay, we got more stuff. We got mortgage fraud. We got all kinds of stuff. We got a 16-count indictment." And the beauty of it is that everybody's wondering, will Donald Trump pardon his buddy Paul Manafort, who he immediately said he feels so sorry for because he would have gotten away with it had he not come to work for the biggest fraudster in the history of fraud, right? Donald Trump himself. He would have gotten away with it is basically the gist of what Donald Trump says he feels bad about, right? Would have gotten away with it. But minutes after, New York charges him. And the beauty here is, as we've gone over with you, that if it's a state government that is charged, the president of the United States, because states have their own rights, you know that. States' rights and all, fought a whole war about it, didn't we? Yeah. And so the president cannot pardon Paul Manafort if he's convicted in a state court. He can't. So here's what happened minutes after Manafort was sentenced.
The Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which is led by Cy Vance, filed a 16-count indictment against Paul Manafort, making allegations that he violated residential mortgage fraud, attempting to commit residential mortgage fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying business records. Now, many of the charges in this case are exactly the same ones that he committed in Virginia. It has to do with the same loans that Manafort taken out from banks and that he lied to the banks in order to get those loans. This raises two questions. I mean, on the one hand, this is a move by the state prosecutors to say that this is, a way to pardon-proof the case in case President Trump does pardon case Trump pardons Paul Manafort on the federal crimes that he was sentenced to today. But now these state charges are a different level. They're not within the bounds for the president to pardon him. So this is new, fresh liability that Paul Manafort faces. It also will raise the question of double jeopardy because there are some overlapping crimes that are committed here. And that is what we're really going to see Manafort's team argue in court. But by the move today, the district attorney's office bringing this indictment believes that they can work through this double jeopardy, and they're confident that they can bring this case.
Yeah, they can. These are obviously relating to charges out of New York. Just to let everyone know, the Manhattan DA's office has been investigating this probably since charges were brought against Paul Manafort, since he was investigated by the Mueller team. So they've been working on this for quite some time. One of the reasons they didn't move sooner was that they didn't want to interfere in the Mueller probe. They sort of have kept things secret and private, and making sure that they don't interfere in that investigation. Now that it's very apparent that Mueller is done with Paul Manafort, and as Kara said, this is a way to pardon-proof this, so that if the president does pardon Paul Manafort, he's still facing a substantial amount of prison time.
Yeah, that's what this is about. And so the judge in this case made it very clear that Manafort, that Mueller's investigation is separate and apart, and that these were just ancillary crimes that Mueller found as he was investigating Manafort to see if Manafort, gave the polling data to, Konstantin Kilimnik, if he changed the platform to be more Russia friendly, if he, was paid by Oleg Deripaska to come up with a media plan to help Trump become president, which was Vladimir Putin's wish. That was not in front of this court. I just want everyone to be super clear, because his lawyers, I got to say, all these lawyers, the Rudy Giuliani's of the world, the Sekulos of the world, this guy, Kevin Dalia, they just stand on the courthouse steps now and lie. This is crazy. This is just nuts, okay? All she was trying was the 10 counts he pled guilty to and an additional charge of witness tampering. That is what this judge had in front of her. What the judge in Virginia had in front of him was bank fraud and wire fraud and keeping 30 foreign bank accounts containing more than $50 million for his work for the government of Ukraine and for his work for Oleg Deripaska. Okay? And by the way, I have to tell you that the investigation of Paul Manafort and all these financial crimes, it predates Robert Mueller's appointment. Robert Mueller was appointed in 2017. And it wasn't the special counsel's office that made Paul Manafort hide his money and not pay his taxes all those years ago. And it wasn't Mueller that made Paul Manafort witness tamper. And it wasn't Mueller that made Paul Manafort lie to the FBI. So this has nothing to do with Robert Mueller, what happened today. This predates Robert Mueller. All these financial crimes predate the Mueller investigation. So this stupid argument that Kevin Dowling made, he said, I don't think we would be here today if it wasn't for the fact that, but for a short time, for a short stint as campaign manager in the presidential election, I don't think we would be here today. I think the court should consider that too. And she dismissed the argument. She just said his crimes predate the Mueller investigation. And the only reason why he says he's sorry is because he got caught. And the only reason why you're arguing this is because he got caught. Because he did all these things before he worked for Trump. This is crazy.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
When the Mueller report is coming down?
I have no idea. I can only tell you one thing. Again, that was proven today. No collusion.
Oh, my
There's
God.
no collusion.
Oh,
There's
my
no
God.
collusion.
It
And there hasn't
wasn't
been collusion. And it was all a big hoax. And you know it. It was done and stated by the Democrats because they lost an election that they should have won because the Electoral College is a big advantage for Democrats, not for Republicans.
What?
And they should have. And I ran the clock out. We ran the whole thing. You ran up the East Coast from North Carolina to Pennsylvania. Then we go up to Wisconsin and Michigan, states that hadn't been won for many, many years. We won those states. And they said, how do we solve this horrible problem? We lost an election that, in theory, some people, I didn't, but some people thought they were going to win, right? And they said, I have an idea. Let's blame Russia. It was a hoax. It was all a big hoax. And now you're seeing it. Today, again, no collusion. The other day, no collusion. There was no collusion. When I had to go to Wisconsin, I went to Wisconsin. When I had to go to Michigan and Pennsylvania and South Carolina and North Carolina, that's where I'd go. When I had to go to Florida, which we won easily, I went to Florida. You don't call Russia when you go to Florida. Russia won't help you much. Have a good time, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, my God. This is a very bad man. He is just so bizarre. And so, again, the judge said this was not a case about conspiracy or collusion. This was a sentencing for 10 financial crimes that a Virginia jury had one juror hang the jury on. Okay? They had 18 counts. They convicted him on 8. 10 counts remained, and Paul Manafort pled guilty to those. This court adjudicated the guilty pleas that he entered into in exchange for leniency and an additional charge of witness tampering. That is what was before her court. Nothing else. In Virginia, the court dealt with 18 financial crimes. 18 of them. And again, they found him guilty on 8. And one juror hung the jury on 10. Then Paul Manafort decided to plead guilty and enter into a plea agreement with Mueller, which he violated. That is what she sentenced him for today. She sentenced him for the 10 guilty pleas that he voluntarily entered into and a charge of witness tampering. This idea that she had in front of her court or T.S. Ellis had in front of his court, anything to do with the campaign is bullcrap. Nothing to do with the campaign. With the only thing to do with the campaign, the only narrow issue about the campaign was whether or not he passed polling data to Konstantin Kilimnik and lied about it. She was not the fact finder in whether or not he did do that. She was the fact finder in whether or not he lied to Mueller. And Mueller presented evidence to her that he did and continued to lie to the grand jury, to lie to him, to lie to his investigators during the course of his investigation, which is into a conspiracy with Russia. That's what Mueller is investigating. This is not what Judge Jackson was sentencing him on. I don't know why people have such a difficult time. Perhaps this is why the justice, system has its way with us, because we're stupid or because we don't understand what the issue before you is. And some people are so afraid that they cop pleas to things they're not even being charged with. I don't understand. This is just bizarre. And Paul Manafort is a rich white guy, and he got a rich white guy's justice because he got rich white guy lawyers who stand in front of the courthouse and lie at the top of their lungs. They have a president. He has a president of the United States of America lying for him. You tell me. Anything that we've ever done in our lives, if we ever got caught for doing it, that you had a president of the United States vouching for you, or you had a white-collar battery of attorneys or a group of attorneys who were in a joint defense agreement with the president of the United States and decided to lie. I mean, really, this is just it's so amazing. And now we have this other example of a completely rigged system. I mean, we know the elections are rigged against us. We know that we're purged. We know that, districts are drawn to dilute Democrats' votes. We know that, polling places are moved where there's no public transportation available to discourage us from voting. We know that felons who have done all their time, who have met every requirement that a court would put before them in order to have a life again, has been met, that they served their time, they did their probation, they saw their probation officer, they're gainfully employed, they are back as a functioning member of society. They don't want you to ever vote again, ever, never, ever vote again. So that's a problem. I mean, all this, everything we know is the justice, system is obviously rigged. The lending system. I mean, everyone knows what redlining is. You live in a certain area and they don't like you. The banks just draw a big red line around your area and say, and nobody in this area gets a loan. You have to go to a predatory lender, or you have to go to a payday lender, or you have to. Meanwhile, Paul Manafort, he's borrowing against, property that he got with laundered cash. I mean, it's just such a rigged system. The whole thing is. Meanwhile, you go get a $40 loan, and then there's a loan origination fee, and then there's a late fee, and there's a this fee, and that. Your $40 ends up costing you $200 or 600% interest. Everything is rigged. Voting is rigged. Legislation is rigged. Legislation is literally written by the captains of industry, literally written by the Chamber of Commerce, literally written by the National Association of Manufacturers, literally written by the Koch brothers, ALEC, and they just shove this legislation in front of people, and they say, you don't have to be so smart to get our support. Don't worry. You know what? You don't even have to show up except the day that this comes to a vote. All we need you to do is introduce this legislation and make sure that, you vote for it on that day. That's all we need. And then go get drunk. Come on, let's go to a party. Let's go get some money. Everything is rigged. And, for those of you who didn't believe education was rigged, now you know that the entire education, the entire Ivy League, the entire, college system for, prestigious universities, you're elbowed out of that too, no matter how hard you work. It's almost like, why try? I swear to God. This is this thing called Varsity Blues, okay? I wanted to make sure I understood it. I saw yesterday 2 actresses, right? I got it. Felicity Huffman and the one from, Full House. I get it.
Lori Loughlin.
Yeah.
Perfect hair and teeth.
Yes, Aunt Becky. You know who she's married to? The Massimo clothing line that, is like what, in Target? That's her husband. He was charged too. Here's what this thing was. And so that's all I knew about it yesterday. And then I started to, looking into it, and people started reporting, and the lawyers started talking, and the indictments got published. This scheme is so gross. This is so vile. This is so wrong because, as I said, this is a zero-sum game. If they're ne'er-do-well children who don't even want to go to college have seats purchased for them in prestigious universities, then that by very definition means that somebody who is deserving, somebody who worked really hard, somebody who's got perfect grades, somebody who's got a good SAT score, somebody who has done, volunteer work in the community, or has written for the school newspaper, or has been on the AV, the AV dorks of yesteryear are now the billionaires. Ha ha! Oh yeah, you laughed at me, didn't you? Okay, I'm not a billionaire. I'm not even a millionaire. I'm not even 1,000 heir. Okay. But you had 50 people charged in this criminal investigation that went by the name of Operation Varsity Blues. What was it? It happened in two parts. This is really vile. The first part, these parents, and there were 33 parents that were indicted. 33 parents. 9 coaches, but 33 parents. The first part was the parents. The parents would pay this not-for-profit, which makes it even more disgusting, a fake charity. Well, it was a charity, all right. It was called the Key Organization because the cheating unlocked the door. They had the key, right? The Key Foundation, so that not only could I pay the Key Foundation, and they, in exchange, would provide a test taker to take my child's place on a testing day, or a proctor in the room who would take my child's paper, take the SATs, and change their answers so that they would get a good score, even though they had no earthly idea what the right answer was because they didn't even bother to study for it. So that's the first part, that they would pay to have a test taker correct and or take the test, correct their answers or take the test. The second part was that this organization bribed college coaches to help these ne'er-do-well students use their athletic prowess, which they didn't have at all, and they would pay the coaches to say that this person was an athletic genius, okay, even though this person was not on any team or had no athletic abilities whatsoever. For instance, one of the coaches was paid $400,000 $400,000 to vouch for I think this was the crude team, okay, to vouch for some girl who was never on a crew team in her life, and he was like the head of the crew. Why is that a sport? Why is crew a sport that gets preferential treatment in college admissions? Why is sailing a sport that gets you preferential treatment in college admissions? This is real white privilege. This is bizarre. You know why I say that? Because most kids from an inner city, they don't get to play crew. They don't get to play sailing. So that leaves all of them out, right? That leaves everybody out. I mean, this is just so unbelievable. Some parents literally paid $6.5 million to guarantee admissions for their children, and other parents paid $200,000. Aunt Becky, she paid $500,000 for her two girls. I mean, this is so sick, and they were all wiretapped. There are actual wiretaps. And one of the guys, I mean, aside from, the people that Felicity Huffman, I mean, her husband is William Macy. Again, it all goes back to Fargo. He's fleeing the interview. Remember, he didn't get charged, William Macy. I don't know why. He was on the phone, too. But they paid for their daughter to be... This is really sad. This is really going to break your heart if you haven't heard this little aspect of it. So in order to get the kids to the proper test-taking site and on a certain day, where the proctors, the people that, the teachers that go pencils down, right? And they walk up and down the aisles, make sure you're not looking at somebody else's paper and cheating that way, right? The proctors were working for this key company. And so in order to get the kids into the proper room with the proper proctor, with, the proper administrators and all that, or to have a proctor that would allow a man from Florida, of course it's Florida, to take the test for your child. He got paid $10,000 to take these tests for the kids. In order to get to the right place, what you did was this guy who owned this company would tell you to take your child to a psychologist. Have your psychologist write a letter saying that your child has a learning disability and your child needs more time to take the test, more than one day, because they have learning disabilities. So people with disabilities should be outraged by this. And then after your child was deemed to have had a disability of some sort, you would be allowed to take the test over 2 days. And the kid would go into those designated test centers, and that's where this guy had the test takers or the proctors who would correct your child's answer, thereby guaranteeing a certain score for a price. The FBI has been on this case for really quite some time. There have been 200 FBI agents on this case, and they have been wiretapping all these parents. One of the parents is a chairman of a giant law firm, a freaking co-chair of a giant international law firm. He's on a wiretapped phone call. He knows this is illegal. I mean, everyone would know that this is illegal, if not wrong. And he's even saying, this seems very weird. It just all seems so weird. And he's like, yeah, but it's guaranteed. He says, you'll do it for your other daughter too. You'll see. The result's going to be awesome. We guarantee it. He goes, yeah, I will do it for my other daughter.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
A central defendant in the scheme, William Singer, will plead guilty today to charges of racketeering conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and obstruction of justice. Singer allegedly ran a college counseling service and something called the Key Worldwide Foundation. Between roughly 2011 and 2018,
wow,
wealthy parents paid Singer about $25 million in total.
Wow.
To guarantee their children's admission to elite schools, including Yale, Georgetown, Stanford, the University of Southern California, the University of Texas, UCLA, and Wake Forest. Beyond enriching himself, Singer used that money to bribe college officials, Division I coaches, college exam administrators, all to secure admission for the children of his clients, not on their merits, but through fraud. Singer's foundation purported to be a charitable organization.
Oh, my God.
But was actually a front Singer used to launder the money that parents paid him, of which he would then take a portion and dole it out as bribes to coaches and others. More specifically, with respect to the SAT and ACT scheme, numerous parents paid Singer between $15,000 and $75,000 to have someone either take the exam for their child or to correct their child's answers afterward. We have charged 33 parents nationwide with hiring Singer's group to defraud testing companies and/or various universities. These parents are a catalog of wealth and privilege. They include, for example, CEOs of private and public companies, successful securities and real estate investors, two well-known actresses, a famous fashion designer, and the co-chairman of a global law firm.
Oh, God.
Based on the charges unsealed today, all of them knowingly conspired with Singer and others to help their children either cheat on the SAT or ACT and or buy their children's admission to elite schools through fraud. Singer's clients paid him anywhere between $100,000 and $6.5 million for this service, though the majority paid between $250,000 and $400,000 per student. This case is about the widening corruption of elite college admissions through the steady application of wealth combined with fraud. There can be no separate college admissions system for the wealthy, and I'll add that there will not be a separate criminal justice system either.
Well, there is. And there has been. Did you hear the years that they have? It's like 7 years worth of this. 7 years worth of seats being bought at elite colleges where, you know, maybe your kid is like really, really a hardworking brainiac and couldn't get in. I mean, Harvard takes 1 out of every 9 applicants. So when Jared wanted to go to Harvard, do you think the fact that his daddy donated $2.5 million to Harvard factored into the admissions process for Jared Kushner? You know, like Jared's daddy-in-law arranged for him to get a top-secret security clearance, you know, like that. I mean, the amount of money spent on Jared and his career, we could have trained a Cocker Spaniel to do the same things. Why, you know, we're doing that. It's just, this is such a fraudulent system. And by the way, you know, building a building for Harvard or, you know, giving a donation of, you know, $1.1 million to Wharton or to Penn, you know, it's completely legal fraud. Now, it's just so interesting that Trump gave, you know, over $1 million to Penn and all his kids went there. I mean, do you really think Junior had what it took to get into the Wharton School of Business, one of the most difficult schools to get into? Really? This is so sick. Here's a little bit of a transcript. If you read the indictment, which is on, it's in the homework today. The indictment's long, but it's unbelievable. It's great reading. It's really fast because it's all dialogue. Why is it all dialogue? It's all dialogue because it's all wiretaps. And it's people on the phone with cooperating witness, Mr. Singer. He was cooperating with the feds. And he was recording all these freaking parents to get leniency for himself. This is a sick, twisted system. Here's him talking to Gordon Kaplan. Gordon Kaplan is the co-chairman of Wilkie, Farr, and Gallagher, an international law firm. An international law firm. He's a freaking partner, like the partner, co-chair of this international law firm, and he paid $75,000 to a college, you know, for a college coach turned government cooperating witness to have someone else take the admissions exam for his beloved little girl who couldn't get there on her own. Here's the conversation. If you read the indictment, I just want you to know the abbreviations. CW1 means cooperating witness 1. CW2 means cooperating witness 2, and so on and so on. Okay, this is cooperating witness 1. Talking to this lawyer, this co-chairman of this international law firm, okay? The guy says to him, so here's the first thing we need to do. And I think I mentioned this to you, at least to your wife. We need to get your daughter tested for a learning difference. Here's why. If she gets tested for a learning difference, let's say it's my person that does it, or whoever you want to do it, but I need that person to get her 100% extended time over multiple days. So what that means is we'll have to show that there's some discrepancies in her learning, which there's got to be anyways. And if she gets 100%, Gordon, then I own 2 schools. I can have her test at one of my schools, and I can guarantee her a score. If it's the ACT, I can guarantee her a score in the 30s. And if it's the SAT, I can guarantee her a score in the 1400s. Now, all of a sudden, her test score does not become an issue with all the colleges because she's strong enough. Then we'll clean up her transcript. Then her ability with her athletic ability and her testing and her getting better at school, it's much easier to get her into school because you're not fighting huge obstacles at the type of schools you're talking about. Now, if we do that, there's a financial consideration that you have to pay to the school to get it done because this is absolutely unheard of to make this happen. I can make scores happen, and nobody on the planet can get scores to appear. No one can get them to happen. She won't even know what happened. It'll happen as though she will think that she's really super smart or she got lucky on a test and you got a score now. There's a lot of ways to do this. I can do anything and everything if you guys are amenable to doing it. So Mr. Kaplan says, will she know? And he says she doesn't know. Nobody knows what happens. It happened. She feels great about herself. She got a test score, and now you're actually capable for help getting into a school because the test score is no longer an issue. Does that make sense? What happens is all the wealthy families that figured out that if I get my kid tested and they get extended time, they can do better on the test. So most of these kids don't even have issues, but they're getting the time, the extra time. The playing field is not fair. And big lawyer man, Gordon Kaplan says, no, it's not. I mean, this is, to be honest, it feels a little weird, but... And the cooperating witness, who is a coach, says, I know it does, but when she gets the score and we have choices, and then you're going to be saying, okay, I'll take all my kids. We're going to do the same thing with all my kids. And he's laughing. And Kaplan says, yeah, I will. Then there's a follow-up call. And Kaplan realizes his daughter is, pretty much a dunce. Sorry. Because he's saying to the cooperating witness, saying to the coach, listen, she can't really score too high, okay? Because if she does, it's going to raise a lot of red flags. I mean, she doesn't do the work kind of thing, right? He says, yeah, well, I don't want it to be higher than a 32. And the witness says, okay, so, and Kaplan says, it's just going to be hard to justify in light of, and he says, look, and he says, it's just hope, right? I mean, it's what we hope she can do. We hope she can get a 32 or pretty close there too. And the witness says, got you. So I just want to clarify. So she's going to take the test on her own. She's going to do her best, all that stuff. And then we're going to do our magic on the back end. And the lawyer Kaplan says, you're going to do what you do. And he says, yeah, okay, all right. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Essentially, that's why I know I can get a 31. I know I can get a 31, a 32. So we're going to aim for a 31. So if we go 30 or 32, we're safe. How's that? And Mr. Kaplan says, yeah, I think that's fine. Because he knows his daughter will never be able to score anything close to that on her own. So let's not make it too good. And Mr. Kaplan, the lawyer, the co-chair of a giant law firm, wires $75,000 to the cooperating witness as part of the scheme to get her into this school. And he's been charged with conspiracy to commit mail fraud and honest services fraud. And, it just goes to, I mean, this is the elite of the elite. This is the privilege of the top 1/10 of 1%. Thinking they're above the law. And you know what's going to happen, don't you? Mr. Kaplan's going to cop a plea deal. Mr. Kaplan's going to get probation. I wonder if Mr. Kaplan's even going to lose his law license. I doubt it. It's like every working class white kid, black kid, brown kid's worst dream. That there really is an educational system that is slanted against them from the very beginning. And then even if they can rise above 40 kids in a classroom that has books from, the year one, a classroom with, a teacher that's making $36,000 a year, and they still do well, and they're still straight A, and they take the SATs, and they did a prep class, and they do a 1400 or whatever it is, that there's a rich parent that's still able to throw money in an illegal scheme to take our seat at the best college. It's all rigged.
Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
When I say con man, I'm talking about a man who declares himself brilliant, but directed me to threaten his high school, his colleges, and the college board to never release his grades or SAT scores. As I mentioned, I'm giving the committee today copies of a letter I sent at Mr. Trump's direction, threatening these schools with civil and criminal actions if Mr. Trump's grades or SAT scores were ever disclosed without his permission. And these are under Exhibit 6. The irony wasn't lost on me at the time that Mr. Trump, in 2011, had strongly criticized President Obama for not releasing his grades. As you can see in Exhibit 7, Mr. Trump declared, "Let him show his records," after calling President Obama a terrible student.
You see, there's a big cover-up, and I don't think that you understood the importance of Donald Trump threatening Fordham University and threatening the military academy where he went to high school, and threatening, Wharton and Penn and all the, never to release his SAT scores, never to release his transcripts, never to tell anybody about his grades, because this man did not earn a place in any of these elite institutions. I mean, he went from Fordham University to Wharton, and I'm not really sure how that worked. Okay? But all we do know is that he lives in complete and total fear that somebody will release his transcripts. Somebody will show you that he got, like a 600 on his combined SATs, okay? Somebody will show you that he's not smart and he got into these elite schools. Same thing with Kushner. The Kushners paid $2.5 million to Harvard. And then all of a sudden, Jared gets in. Donald Trump says that he was, he graduated first in his class at Wharton. Well, here's two little factoids about Wharton. They don't rank people first, second, or third, or fourth. They don't do that. But there is a dean's list. And Donald Trump was not on it. So he wasn't a top student. Listen, all this fraud. It's amazing. And then he had a university that was a fraudulent university, and he was taking $36,000 from people to offer them a worthless education. This guy Singer, he also runs an online high school, or did, and sold it. I believe Kaplan owns the online high school now. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable. And multiple donations to Penn. The Trump family has given over $1 million to the university that all his kids went to. It's a rigged system. The whole thing is rigged. The elections are now rigged. The justice system's been rigged for God knows since forever. It's the new slavery. They called it the new Jim Crow. It's worse than Jim Crow. It's slavery. It's buildings full of cages with people in them who have committed nonviolent crimes, and they are locked up for life or 25 years without the possibility of parole because they were charged in a federal setting. Now, and here you've got guys laundering $50 million. You got a guy here with this school thing laundering, $25 million over 7 years, paying off coaches at elite schools, paying off, test takers, getting kids declared to have learning disabilities so that they can get preferential treatment and get to take their test over multiple days, which gives him the opportunity to put fake proctors in those testing sites who can either correct the people who pay, correct their submission, their tests, or have somebody go and take the test outright for them. This is sick. Work is just not valued in our society. Again, yesterday we had that conversation about what capitalism really means. Capital is the prioritization of capital. It is the prioritization of money, sheer money. Money that makes money is prioritized. Work that makes money is not. And in this scenario, it's the exact same thing. Hard work is not rewarded with an elite school accepting you. Fraud is. Money is. Money is prioritized, and the whole system is broken. You're talking about Georgetown. Oh, my God. Stanford, UCLA, University of San Diego, USC, University of Texas, Austin, Wake Forest, Yale. I mean, this is sick. The bribing of the college coaches and the preferential treatment for some really strange sports that people who live in cities never get to participate in. They even photoshopped some of the kids' faces onto either stock photos that they found, online, or they actually had the kids pose for a photo that looked like they were part of a crew team, or that looked like they were part of a sailing team, or that looked like one guy was, a pole vaulter. I mean, really. Aunt Becky paid $500,000 to have her two daughters designated as recruits for a crew team in order to get admission to USC. Felicity Huffman spent a mere $15,000 to have her daughter's incorrect answers changed on the SAT. And Felicity Huffman is on a phone call, a wiretap, with an FBI cooperating witness discussing the alleged scheme. All fostering a culture of corruption and greed, all part of creating a very uneven playing field for ordinary people who do extraordinary things to be accepted into these schools through hard work and good grades and community service. It's mind-blowing. You know, we used to look at places like India and go, ooh, they have a caste system? Really? There are people called the Untouchables? Really? I mean, once you're born, your entire fate is determined? And it's the same here. What is the diff? If you're born into a zip code in Brooklyn and you go to PS 272, it's pretty much written in stone now what your opportunities are going to look like. And kids like me, guess what we do? We join the military. For what? To try to get an education. And then you do your service, you come out on the other side, and they go, oh, we did away with the GI Bill while you were serving. So here's a Pell Grant. It'll help you, start in community college. You could go to Broward Community College. And here's a little money to help you do that. But you can only major in these majors. Oh, you want to be a lawyer? I'm sorry, political science is not one of the things Pell Grants cover. You could do business administration. It's a sick freaking thing. The whole country has deteriorated into oligarchy. It has. Rich in Denver.
Hey. Happy Hump Day to you, Randy.
Oh, Hump Day. Yes, it's Hump Day. Oh, can I just say something before you?
Go ahead.
All right. So Friday, need everybody to pay attention. Friday is going to be a technical housekeeping day. We are getting ready to change the studio over to this piece of equipment I told you, this TriCaster, and fix the backdrop so it's not a curtain anymore, and do all these things. So Friday, we're going to pre-wire. So that'll be one day's work. So we'll be off on Friday. And then hopefully we'll come back. And then the week after that, we will need the whole week to set up new lighting, the new cameras, the TriCaster, all those pieces of equipment, okay? And so Friday we're going to be off to pre-wire, and then in a week from now we'll have to take the whole week off because my guys have to train on this new piece of equipment. We have to set up new shots. We're going to have multiple camera shots. It'll be a whole lot nicer to look at, but it's going to take a week to do. So Friday we're off to pre-wire, and then I'll let you know which week we're going to be off.
So probably about 2 weeks, as your tagline says, will be go for launch in a couple weeks.
Yes.
That's safe to say?
Yes. Essentially, we're going to relaunch it, and it will look a whole lot better.
Well, I think you look wonderful in that red blouse today, Randy. But,
this is one of my faves, I have to say. I have it in every color, as you might have noticed.
It's very nice. We're out here in Denver. We're getting 30-mile-an-hour winds and blizzard snow.
Oh, are you getting that superstorm?
Oh, yeah, that bomb cycle. That
I swear they make up these names because when I grew up in the Northeast, we had nor'easters. We didn't have bomb cyclone. Either that or the climate is like freaking changed.
Yeah, it's yeah. But there's no climate dysfunction. Nothing to see here, Randy. I'll tell you, this is absolutely, Randy. It all starts with the House of Lies. It's what we, the lie house, I should say. Everybody connected to this clown is a liar. That lawyer is unbelievable. Goes out on the street and lies. I don't know if there's a penalty for, if the judge could hear that and if she gets him back in front of the court, and I don't think she could hold him in contempt, but something slapped on him just to be basically just the gall.
It's unethical.
And cheating,
she had just explained to the entire world that collusion and conspiracy with Russia was not anything in front of her court nor the court in Virginia, that these were financial crimes that he had pled guilty to, plus a charge of witness tampering. That is what was in front of her.
Yeah, I know. Everybody, like I said, connected to this idiot. Is at the lie house, is drinking the Kool-Aid, is eating the bullshit sandwiches, and we as a system, we got Armstrong, gets caught cheating, Barry Bonds gets caught cheating, everybody now it's the new and like you said in the last segment, William Macy's on the phone. He's not going to go to jail. In Fargo he didn't go to jail, and he's white. He's probably not going to go to jail. It's amazing to me, Randy.
When are they going to put people in jail? When someone shows up in a wood chipper?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you couldn't. It's just like the movies.
I know.
This is real life. It's like I'm going to tell you too. You're talking about this show, and I bought a sweatshirt, by the way.
I'm not selling sweatshirts yet. I can't get agreement on whether we want zippers or I will tell you the long sleeve T-shirt. Yeah, those are really nice. I love that T-shirt. But I have to say the sweatshirts. Here's the thing, half of you want a zipper and half of you want a pullover. But if I do a zipper, I have to redesign the damn shirt because then it's going to go through the logo. You know what I mean? So
right.
I think you're going to get pullovers in the spring.
I like that. That's me as a hoodie. I don't have any zippered ones, but
I think people look better in those than the. I know the sweatshirts are easy to throw on, but whatever. I like the pullover.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's I just watched that movie First Man, and it's about Armstrong. It's Ryan Gosling plays Armstrong, and there's a song in there. Randy says, "But why he's on the moon?" They're talking about all the social improprieties. And all the people were saying, "Well, this money could be better spent for this, for teaching kids, and for our inner school." Well, what sports are the kids going to have now? Marbles? Jungle gym? Why don't we make those, scholarship sports for them? I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Listen, all I know is I'm from Canarsie. I'm from Brooklyn. And, yes, there's water there. Okay, there's a pier and all that stuff. But the water was so polluted when I was growing up that you couldn't sail in that water. You would die. So, right. I mean, so why do you get a scholarship for sailing? I thought that was something you joined.
Nautica.
I mean, come on, crewing? And these people didn't even do it. They didn't even do that thing that's prioritized in admissions. They didn't even do it. They photoshopped their heads on it.
Yeah, I know. And no wonder Randy the Worms, the white old racist men, are screaming that they don't want free education and they don't want college education because it's going to cut off the gravy train. You know, it's no wonder that they're putting federalist racist judges like that. And I won't say the word, but starts with a C, who ruled on the Masterpiece Cake Theater thing out here. You know, that bitch who got a point. No wonder they're Mitch McTurtle is stacking the, because like you said, he's going to be when Reagan was lobbyist, I think there was something like 70. Everything is lobbyist now. Whatever, I like what President Obama said. You want to be a lobbyist and you're a politician, you wait 10 years before you go into the career being a lobby. And
Check this out. Check this out.
For fucking sale.
I know. All right. So everything is for sale. Now check this out. Okay. So we had this plane crash, right? That we had two of them with this new Boeing plane, the
787 Max, right?
Right. The Max 8 and the Max 9. Okay. So the entire world. I mean, it started off with, Oman and then, Thailand and all. They grounded all these planes. Today, Canada grounded the plane. There's a software problem with it, okay?
Right.
Who is our secretary? It's a Boeing aircraft. Who is our acting Secretary of Defense? Who? A Boeing executive.
Boeing executive. I know.
That's number one. So our acting Secretary of Defense is a Boeing executive. Who is our FAA chairman? We have an acting FAA chairman. Why? Because Donald Trump wanted his personal pilot to be in charge of the FAA. He was totally unqualified. The Senate said, don't send him up here. We can't even squeeze that guy through. I mean, it's just never going to happen. And so instead, he left the job open. So we've got this crisis now with this plane where the thing with the plane is the engines were put a little more to the front.
Right.
Okay.
And it pitches the nose.
It pitches the nose. It pitches the nose down as you're taking off.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're on autopilot. Now, if you disengage autopilot, you can control the plane. But there's a problem with the fact that the nose pitches down when you really want to be going up, and planes were crashing on takeoff, right? Yeah. All right, and so there's a software update that would, fix it according to Boeing. But this president, he was the only one in the world who didn't want to ground the Boeing plane. Why? Because the Boeing CEO called him up, and the Boeing CEO went down to Mar-a-Lago, and the Boeing CEO gave him $1 million to the inaugural committee. And now we've got a Boeing executive as the acting Secretary of Defense. And now we have no one in charge of the FAA.
Yeah, it's like the VA, It's
right.
like the VA.
Yeah, the VA's running out of Mar-a-Lago, too, by a comic book.
It's all bullshit,
Yeah. Yes.
What worries me, Randy, and I hear the music, is they'll rig the elections, and no matter how many of us vote, we won't get our guy. That's what I'm worried about, especially that.
You should worry about it. I worry about it.
I'm absolutely worried about it.
Donnie Deutsch is worried about it. Michael Cohen is worried about it. I mean, these are people that all sit on the TV every single day and they go, he's not leaving. He isn't going to leave. Because if he leaves, he goes to freaking jail. Now, he can pardon everybody ahead of his leaving, like his children, who are obviously targets of Robert Mueller's. He can pardon Paul Manafort. He can pardon whoever the hell he wants. But once he leaves, remember, the AG in New York is prosecuting him for fraud.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I think that there are lots of parents feeling lots of things like, why am I even trying? I'll never be able to do that. I knew it was rigged. And kids who believe that they're boxed out because of social standing. And, a lot of people with means and legacy and ambitions who are going to be pissed off as well because they're going to be like, I can't believe that people were finding this end run around.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wrong here, and my biggest fear is we don't know the half.
Yes, and that was my response to just about all the people who texted me today saying, can you believe this? And many more who said, I'm not surprised. Isn't this the way it works? I thought it worked this way, maybe not to this level.
How sad is that?
That's the way it works. That's why that there, equity in college admissions, that all of these standards and rules, that many people don't seem to be abiding by. But for the most part, Chris, that's how it happens.
I think that
that's the way the world works, and especially in this.
It feeds the cynicism of that. You're right.
It does. It does feed the cynicism, but I'm not saying it's right. But I'm not so naive to think that this doesn't happen all the time and that there aren't people out there wondering if what they didn't cross the line ethically or legally.
I don't disagree with that. Look, if these people
to?
hadn't been piggish, if they hadn't wanted a tax deduction for their Fugazi charity donation, it may have never triggered legal suspicion.
Yeah.
If they hadn't been such pigs in terms of not only do I want to pay you for fixing the test, because that's not as easy. There's no law against cheating on your SATs. You know what I mean? That's about how the admissions boards and how the standard, you don't go to jail.
Apparently, if you did it this way, there is a law against it. If you have somebody else to.
Because of the mail fraud.
Right.
Because of the use of different systems in the furtherance of a fraud with this fraudulent donation to a non-existent charity or a charity that existed but was for really a different and special purpose.
Right, and that is the only reason why it's illegal. That is the only reason why these parents are on the line. That is the only reason why the FBI knocked on Felicity Huffman's door. That is the only reason why Mr. Massimo, had to get out on bail yesterday, and his lovely wife also had to get out on bail yesterday or today. But she's been given permission to leave the country. She had to surrender her passport, but she's allowed to go to Canada, to Vancouver and stuff, because she's working. And we wouldn't want to disturb her, her career. Oh, it's just so sick and sad. I don't know who Don Lemon talks to. I don't know, like what circles in Manhattan he runs in, but it must be the super elite. Because they're all saying, isn't that what you do? Isn't that how it's done? To him, they're telling him, oh, I thought this is the way it was. I thought this is the way it worked. You pay $500,000 to a freaking sports coach, even though your kid doesn't play the sport, and they Photoshop your kid's face on someone else's body, and then you get in as a sailing athletic scholarship. How is that possible? How is that possible that you could get into Yale that way? How is that? Now, I've always been aware of affirmative action for white people. I think I'm the first person that ever told you about legacy scholarships and legacy admissions, which means if your daddy went there, you can go there, even if you're a C student, a la W. W couldn't create a full sentence with a thesaurus and a flashlight. Okay, there's no way this man could make a full sentence. He thinks strategery is a word. It's just, I know, but it's true. This is really how, how legacies get affirmative action. And when you talk about affirmative action for somebody whose life has been nothing but overcoming institutional barriers and still succeeding, that person should get a couple of extra points on their admission total score. And you got crazy white people out there say, oh, well, they're going to take a seat away from my youngster and blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. No, they're not. Their full life is going to be taken into account, just as your youngster's full life is going to be taken into account, minus money. Minus money. Because poor kids from the inner city don't have money to throw at an admissions officer or to get somebody to take the test for us. It's ridiculous. Sven in San Francisco.
Hey there, Randy. Wanted to get your opinion on my idea that kind of along these same lines that money garners power and influence, and frankly, I feel that I hope Pelosi is just doing a head fake on Trump right now, because I think if she had gone ahead and impeached Bush 12 years ago, whatever it was, this wouldn't be happening today. This whole right-wing empowerment has been because she gave them a pass, I believe. She didn't impose the law on them that the rest of us have to live by.
Well, what were we going to impeach Bush for?
Well, that whole bull crap about getting us into a war when there wasn't the evidence to support it.
So I understand he cherry-picked the intelligence. I was so anti-Iraq war, it was unbelievable. I was out in Lafayette Park, sleeping in the park. I mean, I was one of those crazy ladies that did that, okay? And I was totally, totally against that war. But the Democrats voted for it. So really, how was she going to impeach him?
Say we made a mistake as well.
But it's not impeachable.
No, say that we now know what the true facts are, and the facts show that he broke the law many times.
What laws did he break?
Well, lying us into a war, number one.
I understand that, but I mean, honestly, the whole world voted for that. The UN voted for that. The Senate voted for that. The House voted for that. You couldn't impeach somebody for that. That wasn't I mean, the war was just so wrong. It was wrong-headed. It was bizarre. We invaded an unarmed nation. We've been paying the price ever since. But I don't see how you could impeach Bush. But I do see how you could impeach Trump when Mueller's report comes out, because I believe that report will be devastating and show that this man's entire life has been one endless fraud, robbing banks, fraudulent documents, cheating on his taxes, lying to the people, lying to Congress, the written answers that he wrote, dangling pardons, witness tampering, the whole bit. I think he'll be very impeachable. I really do. And I think what Nancy's strategy is to say the Democrats are anti-impeachment. The Democrats are pro-American people. The Democrats want H.R. 1. We want to get the money out of politics. We want instant registration when you get your driver's license. We want to, have dark money disclose who the donors are. We want gun legislation. We want health care. We want, and so I'm just going to legislate. I'm going to do the job that I was sent here to do for the American people. Now, if something really horrible happens and Mueller's report comes out, well, then, the Republicans will have to have their come to Jesus moment and say, because people in this country will be outraged, this man is a complete and utter fraud. He conspired with a foreign government. He accepted dirt for a price. He changed our foreign policy, did all these things. Okay, and that would be impeachable. I think that's her strategy, is to say that when Mueller's report comes out, the Republicans will also be so sick to their stomach, and Trump will therefore have outlived his usefulness to them, and they will go to him and say, you have to go.
Well, I sure hope so, because if Trump doesn't rise to the issues of impeachment, nobody does. And
I agree. I mean, I'm right there with you on this. This is bizarre.
Be removed from the Constitution because it's useless.
Well, yeah. I mean, that would be the end of, democracy, small d democracy. There's no question. And democracy is hanging by a thread. I mean, if there is any ounce of democracy left, it is that the House still, does some of the people's business. The Senate is gone. I don't know where the Supreme Court is, because they haven't had, their full session with, these new freaks that are on there. But
they're out drinking beer.
Yeah. and at Squeeze House, right? Yeah, I know. But yeah, I mean, it is an open question as to whether or not America has a functioning democracy at this point. Nancy Pelosi believes we do. Nancy Pelosi said in this Washington Post interview, where everybody's quoting her from, you should read the whole thing. She's saying that she believes that America is strong enough, that democracy is strong enough to prosecute a president when needed. And if Mueller's report comes out and shows that this man is prosecutable, the Republicans will do it, because he will have outlived his usefulness because of the outrage of the American people. That's her strategy, is that the Republicans will do it. It's pretty smart. But then again, well, I don't even want to go there, because I believe Mueller's report is going to be horrific. I think there will be so much there that it's going to blow people's minds. And, look, today, you got some emails. Michael Cohen has been testifying, as you know. And Michael Cohen has been producing documents. And sometimes you don't realize what the significance is of certain testimonies until later, like this testimony about how Trump didn't want his SAT scores out, and Trump doesn't want his admission records out, and Trump doesn't want any of his college grades out, because he was probably just there because, daddy had money. And he knows it. And his sons probably went there because daddy paid for them to go there. And same with, Ivanka. Can't she just sit over there and be pretty, like Tucker Carlson would tell her to do? I mean, that's their view of women. Just sit there and be pretty. Just sit there and do what I tell you. Why is that not good for her? I don't understand. Well, daddy gave $1 million, so she therefore gets to go to Wharton Business School and claim that she's a Wharton grad, right? But honestly, this is just like so tip of the iceberg. So now Michael Cohen's been giving documents, and one of the documents that Gloria Borger at CNN got today was 2 emails. She got 2 emails between Giuliani's buddy, a guy named Costello, a lawyer, and Michael Cohen. The 2 of them were going back and forth. And Gloria Borger over at CNN got copies of these emails. And the emails show that Giuliani's dude had reached out to Michael Cohen and offered services to Michael Cohen, legal services. And Michael Cohen said, why don't you find out if Trump's mad at me? Why don't you find out if I'm still part of the inner circle? This was after his house was raided. And this guy Costello, who's Giuliani's guy, make no mistake about it. He's been friends with Rudy Giuliani for 40 years. He says, Michael Cohen brought up, why don't you go discuss whether or not I should cooperate with Trump and find out if he's going to give me a pardon, because if he is going to give me a pardon, I won't cooperate. And so this Costello guy, who is Giuliani's dude, he reaches out to Donald Trump. He actually does it. And he writes an email, or he has a phone conversation with Rudy Giuliani, and he has a phone conversation with, I don't know if he talked to Trump or not, but in the emails that CNN got, Costello, this Giuliani dude, tells Michael Cohen, who Costello says was worried about his relationship with Trump. He writes to him, he said, I just spoke to Rudy Giuliani, and I told him I'm on your team, meaning I'm now your lawyer. Now, this is interesting because Stephen Ryan, at this time, was Michael Cohen's lawyer. So he says, I just spoke to Rudy Giuliani and I told him I was on your team. He asked me to tell you that he knows how tough this is on you and your family, and he will make sure to tell the president. He said, thank you for opening this back channel of communication. He asked me to keep in touch. In a follow-up email, I believe that was sent on the very same day, Mr. Costello writes, there was never a doubt and they are in our corner. Rudy said this communication channel must be maintained. He called it crucial and noted how reassured they were that they had someone like me, whom Rudy has known for so many years in this role. Sleep well tonight. You have friends in high places. Now that sounds to me like this Costello guy was running interference and reporting back to Rudy Giuliani Michael Cohen's mood after the raid. And he's trying to tell Michael Cohen, don't worry, there's a pardon for you. Don't cooperate. He says, oh no, I was just smoothing over the relationship between Trump and Michael Cohen. But this sure sounds like, dangling a pardon. Now, just to make no mistake about it, dangling a pardon would be witness tampering. You can pardon anybody you want, but you can't do it with corrupt intent. So if you were wondering why can't he pardon Michael Cohen, he can, but not with corrupt intent. Not to shut him up, not to keep him from cooperating, not because he's implicated too to cover it up. You can't do that. It's like we have one campaign finance law, no foreign money. That's what we have, one. And we have one pardon law. Can't do it with corrupt intent. Buy a stinking podcast.